Thank you so much, Glenn. Hey, everybody, I'm Clif Gooding. I'm a grateful alcoholic. I'm sober since August the 15th of 2001, and for that short amount of time, I'm as grateful as I know how to be. And it's good to be with everybody. I can't think of a better thing to do on a Thanksgiving Eve um, during Gratitude Month to be with a bunch of folks who are seekers who are looking in the same direction, trying to find today and expand upon the common solution that Wilson in the first 100 hammered out in that beautiful piece of literature published in 1939 that we refer to affectionately as the Big Book. And so I want to thank Glenn for inviting me here today. I don't do much Zoom anymore. It's almost impossible to get me on Zoom anymore, but I can't say no to Glenn. So there you have it. So uh, I'm here at his request, and I'm grateful for that. I really am. I want to talk to you a little bit about today about. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, but I want to wind it through what I call the four mainstays of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that is getting right with God, getting right with self, getting right with others, and then a lifetime of service. And hopefully, within the next little bit of time that we're together here, I can make it all the way through, and somewhere in there you can find something perhaps to take you through this rest of this day until you hear a better speaker maybe later today or tomorrow. So um, I'm a real alcoholic. I have been, I think, since I came out. I've had that, uh, I would say, an inordinate amount of self-centeredness. Our book talks about where the extreme examples of self-will run right. I think that's me. I have been over concerned with me almost all my life. This idea that, restless, irritable discontentedness, which Silkworth observed in those many 15,000 alcoholics that he treated, that was me. I suffer from what Wilson talked about in the 12 and 12 when he talked about step five, this idea of anxious apartness, this idea that I'm separate, different, all that. Um, I'm unhappy, unsatisfied, dissatisfied, particularly with my current circumstances. I'm just looking to be somewhere else with somebody else. When I drank the first time, all that changed. It just seemed to abate all that ick that I seem to have. And, I'm sick, but I don't feel bad. There's something about me that's just not right. And this idea of powerless and unmanageability, I didn't know that when I drank, that something different happened to me than 90% of the population. I had no idea I suffered from an allergy. I thought I just liked to party. And I can tell you by the time I came to Alcoholics Anonymous in the summer of 2001, it was a party of one. The party had long since stopped happening. There was nobody else but me. I was trapped in my house for 3 years and can't get out. So the party, what I viewed and what I would have told you was I just like to party had long since been over. Alcoholism was, as Wilson described it, a subtle foe, and it was one that would take me out. And then I also didn't know that not only being I didn't know that I had this allergy to alcohol, but also didn't know that I suffered from alcoholism, that the effects of alcoholism was not necessarily, although certainly prevalent when I was drinking. There was the other effects of alcohol that attack me when I'm not drinking. This idea that the problem centers in my mind, that I am, um, when I'm not drinking, all I think about is when am I drinking again? How soon can I drink again? And where can I drink? And so this idea of personal powerless and unmanageability, early on, it doesn't seem to manifest itself that way because I'm young, and it seems to me that everybody's drinking like I drink. This delusional life that I live, that I look around and believe that everybody's drinking like me. And I got to be honest with you, there were people that I grew up with that we would go out drinking like on holidays like this. We would go out drinking. We might start Thursday after the Thanksgiving dinner and go all weekend. And they looked a lot at me. They would go drink for drink with me. But the crazy thing happened to those people. They met him, they met her, they got these great jobs, and they just stopped drinking. And when they did that, their lives got better. And I can tell you that's not my experience in the summer of 2001 when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous for what I hope to be the last time. My experience was when I stopped drinking, my life doesn't get better, it gets worse. And that I suffer from this illness that sobriety seems to be the problem. It's not drinking, it's the absence of alcohol in my system, which seems to be the problem. I just don't know how to interact with people outside of in the real world. And this delusional life I've created, as the book talks about it, it seems to become the only normal one for me. And so when I wandered upon the shores of Alcoholics Anonymous after being displaced from my home one more time by my sweet wife, she'd had about all she could handle, and she threw me out of the house. And early in the summer of 2001, I came to AA with the idea that I'm just going to come here, not to get sober. I came here to get back in the house. I mean, I don't really have a problem with alcohol. She seemed to have a problem with it, but I didn't have a problem. And so I came to Alcoholics Anonymous not because I suffer from alcoholism, but because I suffer from homelessness. And I needed to get back in the house. And it seemed to me if I could come to AA and tell her I was coming to AA and get her to kind of settle down, my life would be okay. And I made it 45 days when I discovered I'm not like my friends, that when I stop drinking, my life gets worse. And I drank again. People call it relapse. I don't really call it relapsing because I'm not a member of AA. I'm a visitor. I'm a visitor to AA. Really three kind of people that come to AA: visitors, attenders, and members. And I'm just a visitor. I'm coming there to get back in the house. I don't really want to attend. I'm just coming as a visitor till I can get her pacified. I go out on a big relapse, and I don't know that this is my problem. I don't know that I'm alcoholic. That's the real truth. And so after I came back to AA, I got on August the 15th, which became my sobriety date, not because I picked it, because it picked me. And I just, I had an adequate representation of Alcoholics Anonymous appear in front of me and began to sing the music of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when we visited that day, I just knew that there was this overwhelming presence of grace in my life on that day. And I know you may be like me, that you've had opportunities maybe prior to coming to Alcoholics Anonymous where you've had those moments in time where you think, I got to do something different. And then, you get nothing really happens to you. You don't go to AA. Nobody brings you a beneficial message. And the worst thing that all can possibly happen to an alcoholic happens in that case. You get to feeling better. And then you think, my God, I almost went to AA. Well, thank goodness I didn't do that. I almost got punished and I didn't have to go. So, but on that day, I heard the message clear. And I believe in that moment of grace, what happens is God cracks our heart. We get opportunities to stand inside of that and see ourselves perhaps for the first time who we really are. That happened to me on that day. And I had that, what the book talks about, this, what is really the first step in recovery, and that is to concede to my innermost self that I'm alcoholic. And on that day, as Don began to talk to me, sing the music of Alcoholics Anonymous, I began to realize, oh my gosh, it really is me. And so this idea of powerlessness and unmanageability, it became in the forefront of my life. When we look at this idea of powerlessness, if I lack power, and let me tell you, lacking power over booze, but if I look back at my life, if I give an honest appraisal of my life, I've been powerless over a lot of things. I know right from wrong, this idea that it talks about in our book. If I just had a better philosophy of life, if I had a better moral code, then I could be okay. I had all that. I had good parents. I had parents that taught me well. But I can't seem to implement that in my life. I go by a sign and it says wet paint and I don't touch. And I think, well, I don't know. Is it really? I mean, I need to touch that to really see if the whole world is marching and it says, okay, here we go right. The first thing I think about is I wonder what's left. I'm just going to go left, see what's over there. I'll come back and I can't make it back. I know the right thing to do and I suffer because of that, because I know right from wrong. I just can't implement that in my life and I suffer. I just absolutely suffer. And so this idea of powerlessness and unmanageability, I remember in my drinking days, I'd been about a 3 or 4 day run and I was watching infomercials about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, caught a infomercial on OxyClean. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this stuff, but OxyClean. And so I'm watching it, and this guy, the pitch man, he's talking about the problem, and he pulls out this T-shirt's all dirty, grass stained, and all that, and he's talking about the problem. I'm kind of looking around. Hell, I'm in the problem. I'm looking around. I got beer cans. I got empty bottles. I've got some other things that I like to do that make me stay up later and drink longer and not black out working in my life. I've kind of become the unofficial night watchman in my neighborhood, uncompensated nonetheless. I'm the night watchman, and I'm looking around at the problem, and old Billy throws some of this OxyClean in the tub, and he puts that T-shirt in there, and it agitates around. He's pitching. I'm moved to the edge of the chair. I mean, he's got me. I'm in. And in a few minutes, he reaches in and pulls that shirt out, and shazam, it's just clean. And he says to me and everybody in the viewing audience, for like $29.99, I can have a box of this OxyClean. And so I thought, I got to have that. And I went back to my wife's purse and got her debit card because I certainly didn't have any money. And I charged a box of that on her card. And the next morning, she wasn't near as excited as I was about it, which was kind of a disastrous spot. But nonetheless, as promised, in 6 to 8 weeks, the OxyClean showed up, and I began to put that in the laundry. And lo and behold, it worked. It really worked. It worked so well. I began to use it in the dishwasher. I just began to practice OxyClean in all my affairs. It was just a great day. And at some point in time, I ran out. I just ran out of OxyClean. And I didn't have to stay up to 4 in the morning to catch that infomercial again, because this time I had some practical experience with it. I'd seen the demonstration. I tried it for myself and had some practical experience. I didn't need to do that anymore. And when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, that's what I saw here. People demonstrating the power of this higher power in their life. They began to demonstrate that for me. And I began to watch them. And about 90 days sober, somebody came up to me and said, "How long have you been sober?" 90 days. And it struck me that I had not been 90 days sober since I was 11 years old, that I had not gone 90 days without any kind of booze in my system. So what happens for us here, we get the opportunity to come to believe. We watch people demonstrate to us the change that can happen. The old timers used to say, we come to believe. I come here to believe, not come to. I come here to believe this can work for me too. On the day that guy was watching that OxyClean commercial, had he been out drinking the night before, he puked in that tub, I'd have changed the channel on him, man. I'd have changed the channel. And I think about that when I'm in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Am I in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and I'm puking the problem, and the newcomer there just changes the channel, misses everything, doesn't get an opportunity to recover, to come to believe, as I had the opportunity to believe this idea in step 2, that this power works in me because I get to see the demonstrations. Oh, dawned to me on the day that he and I visited, he asked me, do you hope that's working for me can work for you? And of course I did. The whole essence of step 2 is for us to have this hope that will work for us. That those of us, the 2 million that have gone before us, and many, many more, that whatever they were doing can work for me too. And so Don said to me on that day, "Okay, man, well, then let's just do the 3rd step prayer." And so we got on our knees and we prayed this idea in step 3, this idea that I think it's genius that Wilson, when he wrote the steps, that he had this idea that we can, as if it's our choice, our decision to really turn our will and our life over to a fact which has been a fact since we're here, as if we are now acquiescing in God taking control of our life, which in fact he has had the entire time. It's amazing, but yet we're led into that, to believe that to be true. And I needed that to be true. I needed to make the decision. I remember early on in AA, I was hearing people talk about that. You guys may have ever heard of this too. They tell you about the 3 frogs on a log. One makes a decision to jump in. How many's left? I'm thinking, my God, I'm dying over here and you guys are giving me frog riddles. How does this work? I'm suffering. I need some help here. But the poignant fact of all that is I can't see through that. Just making a decision does me little to no good. Glenn can invite me here today and I can make a decision to come. But if I don't sit down in front of my computer, punch the button, have the Zoom come up, put in the proper link and get here, without any action, I can tell Glenn all day long, yeah, I'm going to come and do that. I'm going to come do that. But if I don't take some action on my part, the decision means nothing. And so when we talk about getting right for God, those first three steps are what that's all about. This idea that when we meet God in those first three steps, this idea of God says to us, so you're powerless and your life is unmanageable. And we have to cop to that because all the research has been done prior to me coming to AA. All that research I did out there leads me to the conclusion when it says to me, hey, when you have to concede the concession to my innermost self that I'm alcoholic, that's the first step in recovery. I have to cop to that. I've done all that research. When I read in the book, when I read the doctor's opinion, Bill's story, there is a solution more about alcoholism. They got me. I'm there. I found myself in those pages. And we say, yeah, that's me. And God asks us a simple question in step 2. He says, and so you're willing to consider my existence. To which we say, well, we really hope that's true. I really hope you really are. And then the third question is, and because of that, you're willing to establish some kind of relationship with, you're willing to work on some kind of relationship with me. And we say, yeah, I'm willing to do that. And in that moment, God says, okay, we're good. And we get right with God in that moment. That's it. We want to complicate it in Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to think that what I have is some kind of neurosis that they will write volumes about. But what I am is a garden variety drunk. And I got to cop to the fact that that's who I am, that I'm powerless and unmanageable, that I hope this is going to work for me, and I'm willing to make a decision to go on with the rest of the steps. And in that moment, God says we're good. And so we launch out of this vigorous course. Next, we launch on this vigorous course of action. I begin to look at my life. Step 3, we have this in there. It talks about, the real problem in my life is selfish and self-centeredness. I want you to play the role I've assigned you my entire life. The trouble is you guys don't participate very well. You seem to want to do what you want to do. And I become restless, irritable, and discontented again. And from that idea that I suffer from this delusion, it says, that I can somehow wrest satisfaction and happiness out of the world if I can just manage well. If I can get you guys to do what I want to do to make me happy, then I'll be okay. And I suffer from that. And that evidence begins to get laid out for me in step 4. I start to put me on trial. I start looking at all of you people, what you've done for me. And lo and behold, at the end, I get convicted. I start to look at you, how you have affected me in my life, what you've done to me. I lay out there what it has affected. I look at all that. And at the end, it says, now setting all that aside, what was your mistake? And oh my gosh, suddenly I become judge, jury, and the executioner that, oh my gosh, it really is me. It really is me. And I get an opportunity to share that with another human being. And I get that idea of humility because I got to come cop to all the stuff in my life. I remember when I sat down with the guy to do my 5th step, we went to his room. He said, Cliff, I'm here, you're here. We got to get God here. That's what the step calls for. To admit to God, yourself, and another human being the exact nature you're wrong. And so he said this prayer. And then what he did for me, I think, was the greatest thing that anybody could do for me in that moment. He just led with something. He said, let me talk to you about some things about me. And he led with the stuff that probably for him was the most embarrassing thing he was never going to tell. And when he got done with that, he looked at me and he said, now I know you have some things on that list that's either written in code or you just didn't write down at all and you're not going to tell me. He said, why don't we just get that out of the way first? Why don't we just knock that out and everything else here will be cakewalk? And we come to this crossroads here in step 5. And the book tells us, unless we do that proper house cleaning, unless we get into what I like to call, if we don't divulge all the bedwetting and the booger eating, if we don't tell it all right there, if we don't reveal ourselves, tell somebody the whole story, we're in trouble. And so I just laid it out for him. I just told him the things that I swore I was never going to tell, that I was going to take to my grave. And when I was done telling it, he looked at me and he said, hey, Cliff, I love you anyway. I love you anyway. And we went through that, and it just seemed like time flew by. I got sent home to sit down for an hour and review the work. My sponsor is one of those sticklers. When I called him and told him, he said, "Where's your book?" I said, "It's here on my table." He said, "Put it on the shelf," because that's the directions. We took the book down from the shelf. He was a real stickler for making sure that we did it the way it said in the book. I put it up there, took it down. I reviewed the first five proposals. I looked at what I'd done, had all this construction stuff in there, had to ask him some questions about that. But I got to look at that. How good did I do? Did I really lay it all out for that guy? Did I really bear everything I needed? Did he get the whole story? And when I was able to call Don and talk to him about that I felt like I had laid it out. We went over this idea about defects of character because he was good about this. He had a whole list for me, which was important to have because I see myself in this delusional state, but Don sees me who I really am. And so we had this list that we went over for me. The crazy thing about step six, I used to believe that, okay, we make this list, we get on our knees, we ask God to take these things. I stand up pure as the driven snow. But if you really take a look at what our textbook talks about, it says we're only really willing to give these defects away when we find them objectionable. Nice little word just tucked around in there, this little hidden right in there, when we find them objectionable. And until then, I'm not ready to let them go. When they become objectionable to me, when the pain becomes so much for me, or better yet, when the pain in your eyes because of my behavior based on my defects comes to such that I can't stand that anymore. That I can't live or attempt to live a spiritual kind of life, still practicing defects that causes you the kind of pain, the people that I love the most, the kind of pain that I used to do when I was out still drinking and using. What I like to refer to as just bar ways. I got to get rid of all those old bar ways in my life. And so I've come to believe, for the time that I've been here, that what the seventh step, it really means that. That God's going to remove that if it's going to serve him some good today in my life, or more importantly, in your life. If there's some defect of character that I need to hang on to today that's going to help you, God's going to give me that. He's going to let me hang on to that. Because why else would the prayer say, "Give me strength as I go out here to do your bidding"? I mean, if he takes them all away, why would I need that? If all my defects are gone in an instant, then I'm back on self-will again. I don't really need his strength today. But the truth is, in order to help you, sometimes character defects are active in my life. Sometimes to help God, the character defects are active in my life. And I get opportunities to practice those. And it helps him or it helps you. And then I need some strength to see what I've done and clean all that stuff up again. And in that process of 4 through 7, what is I get right with self. I begin to see the futility and the fatality of my ways. I get an opportunity to share that write them down, share it with another person, see how they practically affected my life. And when they become objectionable, really ask God to help me on those days. So I get right with self. I've got this list that I made in step 8 that my sponsor said it comes right off of your 4th step. And my sponsor was one of those guys that we looked at. I had this whole list put together. There were certainly some young ladies that I needed to go make direct amends to. I was confident about that. He told me those people had suffered enough under my tutelage that they really didn't need any more of my help. And my best thing I could do was leave those people alone. But I did not have some people on my list that he believed ought to be on there. For example, all 3 of the ex-wives were on there, but their brothers, sisters, moms, and dads weren't on there. And those people were left to clean up all the wreckage I had caused when I left. So he suggested to me that there were some harms to others that I had no resentment to, but I'd caused them harm because of my behavior towards one of their loved ones. And I had a list of institutions. I had people on that list that I had to make amends to. And I started out doing that. I started out on this track of getting right with others. And in that process of getting right with others, what would happen for a guy like me is my office is in downtown Oklahoma City. And so I would come to work, but when I leave my building, I have to look around corners. I can't just leave and go out because I got to see who's coming. I need to know who's coming towards me. Maybe I don't need to see them. I live in fear still. I mean, I'm paralyzed by fear that I'm going to see you and I've harmed you, and I know that's a problem. And what happened for me is I began to make these amends under my sponsor's direction. As I began to clean up the wreckage of the past, what happened, I began to realize I could not only I could no longer tell you what color your shoes are, but I could tell you what color your eyes are, because my head got lifted. I began to be able to be back in the flow of life. I got to be willing to be back in society. I remember one of the best amends I made was to my mom and dad. I had got an opportunity to go sit with them and tell them exactly who and what I was. And I got to give my dad a copy of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he read that. And although he never met you people, he loved you because he's got his son back. And about 5 years into my sobriety, my dad got really sick, and I was with him when he took his last breath, and he moved to the next room. And I remember coming back to Oklahoma City from Dallas, and I got in my car the next day to go home to where my mom lived down in southeast Oklahoma. And I got in my car, and the sun was just coming up in the east, and I was passing down the skyline of Oklahoma City, and my phone rang, and it was this longtime member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Her name was Zola. Zola was 90 years old and 40 years sober. And she had gotten sober because she had woke up one time with a fella, and she looked over at him and said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm your husband." And she said, "What's our name?" And that began a great relationship. And she decided she probably ought to get sober, get married in a blackout. And that relationship lasted until that fella died. And she was a great member of AA. And she called me that morning on the way to my mom to help her, to be of service to her. And when I picked up the phone, she said, "Honey, was that your daddy I read about in the paper today?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, it was." And she, without missing a beat, she said, "And he had 5 good years of you being sober." And that's the blessings we get here. See, I look at it how those other years that I missed out, but her spin on it was he got 5 good years of me being present in his life and be having his son back. That's why he loved Alcoholics Anonymous, even though he never met any of you. He loved it. I'm a lawyer by profession, and I had most of my practices in the federal system. And I was a guy who wouldn't show up for court. And maybe a couple of you had a traffic ticket where you needed a lawyer from time to time. And if your lawyer doesn't show up, it's not a good day. And there were times where I would not show up, and people would call and they would throw pillows under me. They wouldn't let me have consequences. They kept covering for me. And one of the things I had to do when I get sober, because all those federal judges were on my list because I had wronged them, my sponsor directed me to go make amends to all those judges, and I had about 13 of them to go make amends to all over the state of Oklahoma. When you call a federal judge, they get nosy over there. They want to know why you want to come see him or her. They're really nosy. And so you got to kind of finesse the appointment, and you go to see those judges, and there's a United States Marshal that sits outside their chambers. And so, at any minute, this could be the time you just go to the hooscow. And I would go in there and I would sit with those members of the bench, and I would confess basically that I have been in direct contempt of your court, that I have snubbed my nose and not appeared when you ordered me to be here. Knowing the truth of the matter was that in an instant, they could pick up the phone and call the marshal, and off I would go. But I want to take it to a person, all those people that I sat down with and was honest with and told them the truth, what had happened to me. To one of those people, they all looked at me and said, "Cliff, we just want you to do better. We just want you to be okay." And I'm going to tell you, all those people, all those federal judges, upon leaving their office, gave me not their cell phone numbers, which I still have in my phone today. And I'm going to tell you, over the last 23 years, there have been times when I would look down at my phone and there would be a number and a judge's name tied to it. And they would say to me, "Hey, Cliff, today there was somebody in my court. I think you could help." And what's happened for a guy like me is that, I've been able to get right with others. I've been able to put the pieces of my shattered life with God's help in some semblance together. Where I'm at talking to you today, I got evicted from this building in 1997 because I had this big law firm with 30 people reported directly to me. And I quit showing up. I couldn't show up, and I got evicted from here. And at about 2 years sober, 3 years sober, I came back to this building and said, "Hey, I need to get right with you guys." And I'm not sure you remember, and they remember. They had a file, by the way. They had a file, and I said, "I don't know really how much I owe you." They did. In the file, there was a number, and I'm going to tell you, on that day, I got square with that. And when I got square with them, I needed to get back downtown because I'd come to find out, when I'm sober, I'm a decent lawyer. So I I said, "Hey, I need to move back downtown. I'd like to come back to this building," because my sponsor directed that for me. And they said, "Oh gosh, Cliff, we'd love to have you here, and we want you to come back. We're going to ask you to pay a little bigger deposit this time, but we'd like to have you back." And so for the last 20 years, I've practiced law in the building I was evicted from. And I couldn't figure out why Don would have me do that. I mean, the puzzle pieces didn't make sense to me. Why would Don have me come back? I understood making amends in the building, but why would he want me back in the building I was evicted from? And it was about 2 months that I was here. That's at the elevator one day. I'm waiting for it, and someone came up to me and just started looking at me. And I finally looked back, and he says to me, "Weren't you evicted from this building like 7 years ago?" And I said, "Yeah, I was." And he asked the question that Don knew somebody would ask me eventually: "How are you back here?" And it's really clear in our book what it talks about. It tells me that I'm supposed to be back in the stream of life. I don't get sober to hide out in AA. I heard my good friend say, and Al-Anon one time, say this about Herb, and I'll spin it for AA. AA is not my whole life, but because of AA, my life is whole. And I was able to do what our textbook calls for us to do, to demonstrate God's omnipotence, to share with him what had happened to me and how it was I was back here. And I'm going to tell you, over the course of 20 years that I've been here, from time to time, I've had people get in the elevator with me and say things to me like, "You're that guy that helps people around here, aren't you? You work with alcoholics," to which I have to cop to. And they always say, "Keep up the good work." But see, Don knew that I can't see that far. I can't see, you put a name on a list, you go do it, and then God makes things possible for us, getting right with others. It allows me to be back in the stream of life. And then this last piece to talk about here is 10, 11, and 12, the thing that holds my whole life together. I tried for a period of time in my life to live on step 1 through 9. And I would give lip service to prayer and meditation. I was a prayer because, hell, I'm in the buckle of the Bible Belt. So, I mean, we're prayers here. The meditation. See, I grew up watching this show called Kung Fu with David Carradine, and they would get in this little ashram, and he would sit on these pillows in the lotus position. And I have an old idea that that's what meditation is, and I can't do that. I'm kind of a tree stump. I can't even bend like that. So what I do is I tell you I meditate, but I lie. I'm just a liar in AA. And I run into some trouble here. I ran into some trouble in AA at about year 9 because I'm just trying to live on 1 through 9. Oh, I'll go out and I'll go to treatment centers and all that, but I'm missing some really key pieces in here. Step 10, it talks for us this idea that, you know, When I'm at a step 10 meeting, most of what I hear about are people talking about the default provision in step 10. That is, I go make amends when I screw up. But step 10 really calls a lot more than that for me. I know today. Today, in the book, it talks to us to watch for things. When I watch for things, what does that cause me to do? It causes me to be in the moment. It causes me to be in the right here, right now, in this space as one moment unfolds into the next. It allows me to be the one place prior coming to AA I could never be, in the right here, right now. In the right here, right now, I don't fit in. I don't measure up. I'm different from. I suffer from anxious apartness. I just can't be here. It's too painful. But through a process of those first 9 steps, what it allows me to do is I can be there. And step 10, 11 help keep me in the moment. They ground me here. They cause me to watch moment by moment of my thoughts and my actions. And it keeps me in that position where when nobody's ever been harmed by what I thought, but I damn sure have harmed some people about what I said and what I did. And today, because I can be and I'm not telling you that I'm perfect because I have to clean up some stuff. Sometimes I forget and engage the mouth before the brain really kicks into gear. Or I behave before I really get that pause in there. So I'm not telling you I do this perfectly. What I'm telling you is I've had some great deal of spiritual progress in my lifetime here. I used to be this guy, and maybe you can relate to this before coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got to be honest, sometimes in AA, I'm a guy that would walk in the room and immediately feel less than. And I would look at all you people and think, gosh, if I was as tall as that guy, if I had the job that she had, if I was more athletic like that guy, and I look at everything people had, and I would compare myself, how I felt inside with how you looked or what I perceived the external circumstance of your life, and I would think, I need that, I need that, I need that. In the chapter We Agnostics, it talks about this. We take two views here. One, we can take the view that the world and the universe is just traveling through a cipher, just destination unknown, just this headed nowhere into nothingness. It's not a lot of hope in that for a guy like me. But the other view it says that we take is that, or we could view this as we're God's intelligent agents, ever advancing his creation. And what I've come on to understand through an ardent practice of step 10 and 11, of really paying attention, of being aware, being awake and being aware. I think that's one of the greatest things in step 12, this awakening. But I can have an awakening here. The trick is staying awake. My gosh, all of us here who've been here any appreciable amount of time can tell stories about people coming to AA, having an awakening, going back to sleep and walk right out our doors, never to be seen again. So I've discovered for me that the trick here is sure to stay awake. And I do that by this ardent practice of 10 and 11, of watching, being aware, paying attention to my life. When I do that, what happens is exactly what these steps call for me, is to build upon my relationship with God, to become aware of his presence in my life moment by moment. Wilson talked about in his story, he said, we have to perfect, make better, and enlarge, make bigger our spiritual life. Why? For the certain trials and low spots ahead, through work and self-sacrifice for others. It would be great if I could just come here, get mine, go home, but not for me. I always am baffled by people, the 90% of the population who just get up every day and seemingly know what to do. I have to do an hour or 45 minutes of prayer and meditation just to feel like I'm even. This is where I'm ready to take a shower because I could cop a resentment walking to the shower. I got to get ready for that. But through this practice, what has happened for me is that I have been spiritually progressively better. And I've discovered that in that idea of God's intelligent agents, the only person I never need to compare myself to is the person I was yesterday. And am I today better than that guy? Because here's a real pearl that I have figured out here for me. Maybe not for you, but I figured this out for me. That I like this idea that I'm one of God's intelligent agents. I got that from Don. I used to believe Don would get up every day and look in the mirror and say, now I don't believe this is true, but I like the way I tell this part, so I tell it this way. He used to look in the mirror and say, God, Agent Don showing up for duty. I don't know what you got for me today, but I'm going to go out there and figure out what it is. And as God's intelligent agents, here's the deal. Everything I need to accomplish the mission God has for me, I already have. And the really good news of that is whatever mission God's got for you as his intelligent agents today, you got everything you need. And here's a real buzz. You've always had it. You've always had it. Everything I've ever needed, I've always had. Yet I want to look outside and compare myself to everybody else. Not really appreciating that there's something for me to do today. There's something for me to do today. And it is something that only I can do. Good news is there's something for you to do today. And the even better news is that only you can do it. Only you can do it. There are people in this world that I'll never reach, but somebody like Michael or Amy or Kate or Stacy or Elizabeth or Phil or Glenn, they can reach them and I never can. And so what's my job every day is to get up and go find the ones I can help. That's what step 12 calls for me to do. Be God's intelligent agents, expand that relationship with him and go out and find the task I'm supposed to do today. Not needing anything else from anybody else. Not needing to look at myself and compare and say, I wish I was that, I wish that, because I don't need that. Everything I've got, I already have to do what I need to do today. And because of that, I'm able to be back in the stream of life and do what the biggest piece of step 12 calls for me to do is to practice these principles in all of my affairs. My gosh, I'm going to tell you on some nights at my home group, which meets on Wednesday nights at 6:45, it's a men's group called the Altered Boys. When I go there on some nights, I mean, I'm at the coffee bar and I'm just espousing these platitudes that I amaze myself. I'm telling you, I'm like 2 seconds from water walker status. I'm so good over there on some nights, just laying it out for these new guys. I'm thinking I'm going to go home tonight, not even take my socks off when I shower. I'm just godly. But how am I doing when I come home? If I come home and Lori shuts the door of the bedroom, and if I come home and my kids aren't talking to me, if I come to work and I walk down the hallway and people shut their doors when I walk by, if I go to my neighborhood and the neighbors gather their kids in and go inside when I come outside, how's Alcoholics Anonymous really working in my life? See, because it calls for me that it even tells me that the much more important demonstration of these principles of outlined in those 12 steps, the much more important relies before me, where in my respective homes, occupations, and affairs. Oh, it's easy for that 1 hour, isn't it? Isn't it easy for us? I mean, we just put on our best face for our home group, come to a meeting like this and but how's it working outside? How's it working out there? Can the people out there see the transformational experience that I've had? When I greet people on the street, when I see the person on the street corner, when I talk to the lady at the checkout line, how's it working there? When the lady in front of me has 20 items in the 10 item or less aisle, am I kind to her? Am I nice to them? When I see the baskets when I go to the grocery store and they are just wandering in the wild, can I go gather those up and herd them all up to their proper corral at the basket corral and help the guy in the store? Just be of service to everybody. Can I do that? And I'm going to tell you, when I do that, on the days that I'm able to do that, by no means perfect, but on the days I'm able to do that, man, I'm going to tell you something. Alcoholics Anonymous comes full bloom in my life. That the power that I've discovered here, I think, smiles at me and says, you're okay today, kid. You're okay today. So I'm really grateful to be here. I'm excited for the weekend. I hope you all are too. I hope everybody has a safe time. And Glenn, thanks again, pal.